James catches, puts up a three. Won't go. Rebound Bosh. Back out to Allen. His three-pointer. Bang! Tie game with 5 seconds remaining.
Hello, everybody. That's right, I'm introducing the episode today. The away team here. We're here to talk about the conference finals.
Yeah, we are 2/3 games in, depending on the series, and we're just going to use our day off from the NBA to update everyone.
That's right. The ESPN, we don't want to have the ratings conflict between NFL and NBA hiatus, I guess, that they're doing. Whatever. I mean, I'm not complaining.
Yeah, NFL, I don't know.
Apparently everyone got injured.
Yeah.
Like, I think the 49ers, lost 4 starters.
People were...
injuries to, torn ACLs in one game. Jesus Christ, man.
Jesus Christ. Yeah, at least they beefed up the practice squads for COVID, right?
That's right. Luckily, back in the NBA, the civilized sport, the injuries are pretty minimal. People are coming back from their injuries generally, rather than acquiring new injuries, so that's been pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I can't even remember the last big injury in the playoffs.
Yeah, probably Gordon Hayward. So I guess no better time than now to start talking about the Heat and the Celtics.
I guess to start things off, why don't we talk about what is going on with Miami's starting lineup? We pulled this data. Dragic, Butler, Crowder, Adebayo, Robinson, their starting lineup is minus 9.3 points per 100 possessions for the series. That's really bad.
Yeah, you'd think it would be better, considering that it's a very balanced group of players.
Mm-hmm.
You have pretty good three-point shooting with Duncan Robinson, Goran Dragic, and Jay Crowder sometimes. The defense is there. You have Butler and Adebayo to do playmaking, and Dragic for that matter. So I really don't know what isn't gelling between them, but it just seems like some of the subs that are coming in are just helping them quite a bit.
Yeah, Jimmy Buttler made headlines by saying it's getting old trailing early, and the reason that they are trailing early is because this lineup has just been so ineffective. And I think it was really apparent in Game 3. Goran Dragic was minus 29 for that game. And, I mean, he can almost single-handedly be blamed for the ineffectiveness of this lineup. And the reason we know that is because if you switched Goran Dragic out for Tyler Herro, they become a plus 46 net rating.
Wow.
Which is nuts.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, the second most played lineup that Miami has used in this series, and that lineup being the starters plus Herro. And, of course, in Game 3, I mean, we saw the effectiveness of that lineup. Herro came in and immediately sent the team on a run and closed the lead.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think he just kind of shores up a couple of things that maybe Dragic doesn't provide. He's slightly larger, so slightly better on defense. He's very confident with his shots. You know, he never hesitates to take a shot, whether or not that's a good thing always. I mean, when he's hitting them, it's awesome. And his ball handling, I don't know if it's on the level of Dragic, but so far it's been pretty good. Dragic looked really, really bad in the last game with as many turnovers as he had assists, which is 5. It's really tough. Yeah, and I mean, it wasn't even that. So the Celtics did noticeably increase their level of defensive intensity on Dragic after he just completely torched him in the first 2 games. But a lot of the misses that he was having were not necessarily because of the Celtics defense. Like, sure, maybe they were tiring him out early in the game, and that led to some short shots. A lot of it just looked like he was kind of gassed, to be honest.
Yeah, and I mean, we talked about this in watching the tape. It didn't look like the Celtics were necessarily targeting Dragic. In fact, you know, we'll talk about this a little bit later on, but Duncan Robinson seemed to be the one that they were really going after. Yet, still, when Dragic was out there, they just didn't seem to have the same defensive intensity either.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that the Herro lineup is so effective because conventional thinking would make you believe that you need a conventional point guard out on the court for these minutes, right? And that starters plus Harrow lineup doesn't really have one. But if you really dig down and look at that lineup, it has so much ball handling on its own between Adebayo, Butler, and Harrow that you don't really need a conventional point guard around those guys.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Harrow's very good at getting his own shot off, and that kind of helps out as well. Like, he has no issue trying to get a step back three off, you know? But you also have Bam Adebayo who can pass out from the high post to him. Mm-hmm. You know, there's a lot of versatility when you add him. The weird thing is you think that Dragic would be the same thing. I noticed that him and Bam, they have a very nice pick and roll synergy that just wasn't really coming forward in Game 3. And I think that's what caused Goran Dragic to be almost a minus 30 over the course of the game. By far the worst on the team. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if I would completely write it off. I think that there is probably some random variance involved because on paper the lineup does seem like it should be better. But I do think that replacing Dragic with Hero obviously seems to work. I think also I've seen Hero take the place of Duncan Robinson in certain lineups. Mm-hmm. And it does seem a lot more effective. Like I was saying with the versatility, he's a lot less of a, defensive pylon.
It's weird because you would think that Duncan Robinson would be the better defender between those two because Duncan Robinson's surprisingly beefy. He's a good 1 or 2 inches taller than Harrow, but he just doesn't have the foot speed that Harrow has, I don't think.
Yeah.
Even if Harrow can't really contest with the same length and athleticism, that speed just totally limits Duncan Robinson. But yeah, I mean, it's just really strange. Like you said, the Dragic and Harrow backcourt with Adebayo, Crowder, and Butler lineups are actually pretty good. So, I mean, there's just something going on with the starting lineup that's very strange. I'm not sure if I'm at the point where I think they should change the starting lineup.
No, I'd agree with that.
I think that would be rash. But I think it's telling when the Heat aren't closing the game with that lineup. Mm-hmm. And they're using that Hero lineup instead.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of questions. I mean, the fact that Jimmy Buttler didn't even close Game 3 when it looked like they might have had a chance to come back for a second, very odd decision. I guess I don't really know what the reasoning behind it was, but
I mean, sometimes
probably just wrote off the game.
Yeah, well, sometimes you want to just ride with the lineup that is working during a comeback because you're timid about changing things.
Yeah.
Right? All game, the Heat had been getting outscored, right? So at the end of the game, they found this lineup that was working and they were afraid to mess with it.
Yeah.
Just a side note, kind of crazy that they traded for Iguodala and just are hardly playing him anymore.
Yeah, it is a little strange. I think he was quite the liability in the first half.
Yeah.
You saw, well, I guess we might as well just kind of get into this and talk about the Boston Big Four. I kind of do want to bring up Gordon Hayward first, though, right?
Sure, yeah, whatever you want.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, let's talk about Gordon Hayward for a bit because I think his inclusion was a very important part of the Celtics' defense actually working a lot better. So one thing that was interesting that I think Jared Weiss pointed out was that when Hayward was in, that gave Brad Stevens the flexibility to put in Enes Kanter, and then you would have Hayward on Bam Adebayo, and then you have Enes Kanter on Iguodala, who's in the dunker spot. Mm. And then he doesn't have to, defend the pick and roll or anything like that. So it makes Kanter, who's a big plus on offense, a lot more playable. You can actually use this guy that's otherwise just taking up a seat on the bench because Hayward is basically the same height as Bam Adebayo, and he can't contest him at the rim necessarily, but he is very useful in that kind of high post or pick and roll situation.
Yeah, and of course the counter to that from Spoelstra would be, well, I'm just going to run Andre Iguodala pick and rolls, right, to get Kanter involved in the play. But Iguodala is such a bad three-point shooter that you don't have to switch on that.
No, I mean, he's been a pretty huge issue for Miami, just being completely unplayable.
Yeah.
Just zero spacing. And having him in with like Derek Jones Jr. or something is just a non-starter, although I'm pretty sure they did try that at some point.
Yeah, I seem to remember minutes in the third quarter with them. I just think it's strange that they traded... I mean, did they really trade that much for him?
They got Jay Crowder too, so that's a pretty big addition.
Yeah, it's funny how much better Jay Crowder has been for them than Andre Iguodala.
Yeah.
But...
Yeah. The other thing about Hayward, just to finish up talking about his defense, he's also just very heady when it comes to defense. He knows how to read passing lanes. He knows how to be in the right place. There was one play where he basically prevented 2 shots like right at the rim, one from Iguodala and one from Tyler Hero. And it's just like, he doesn't have to be super physical in order to contest those shots and block them. It's his knowledge of the game that allows him to do that. So that's his defense. His offense has also been quite helpful, even though he had a pretty unimpressive stat line. He was helping bust up their zone because he's a very adequate playmaker. And if you have him at the free throw line, which, you know, it's the idea, you want to get a little bit of penetration to kind of throw off the zone, get an open 3 for your guys.
A little bit of what?
A little bit of in and out action. Anyways, you want to get a little bit of that going, you know. No, but you want a little bit of penetration so that, you know, when you get doubled or, you know, blitzed or whatever, you can pass out to an open shooter. And unlike Kemba Walker, Gordon Hayward is like pretty tall. So there's no big risk of him getting lost in the trees and turning over the ball like we've seen with Kemba Walker.
Yeah.
You know, that's been such a big issue, is that Kemba will try to do the right thing and get up towards the elbow, towards the free throw line, towards the paint, but Miami will just bum rush him and he'll just, you know, fumble the ball and it turns into a fast break.
Yeah, I just think I was impressed with Hayward's, like you said, headiness on both sides of the ball. He made a couple of really nice passes, and he played with an energy that I think was underrated.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed like the team played better when he was out on the court, which is, you know, really impressive considering he's missed all this time, and he came back and played 30 minutes in his first game back. Yeah, and what's probably the most important thing about Hayward coming back is it opens up all of these really interesting small ball lineups. The most important one being the Celtics death lineup, which is Kemba, Tatum, Brown, Smart, and Hayward. And that lineup played 7 minutes last night and was plus 86 per 100 possessions, which is like insane.
Yeah. It's surprising too, because they did use that lineup extremely limitedly in the regular season, and it was not good. It was not good. But I think against Miami specifically it works because you can have someone like Hayward, and then you have someone like Smart, who's so good in the post that it allows you to keep Bam Adebayo more or less in check, at least in some regard, that you don't have to have a traditional big out there. Yeah.
And, you know, Hayward's actually quite good at guarding bigger men, too.
Yeah.
He's a lot thicker than I think people realize. And also, you know, Tatum being such an incredible rebounder for this series, I think, has helped.
Yeah.
The guy's averaging 11 boards for the series, which is incredible. So, yeah, I mean, I'm very intrigued by how much play we see from that lineup going forward, because I think that could be a really interesting lineup to throw at Miami. And, you know, I'm not sure if we'd actually see it if the Celtics went to the finals against either of the teams in the West.
Yeah.
They just seem like they have big men that are too good to be exploited by that small lineup, but we'll see. Talking about the Celtics a little bit more, I think so far what we've seen from them is really amazing play from their big four. Except, I mean, Kemba's been okay.
There's a bit of a but.
Yeah. I think we can say that Kemba's play has come along, considering how much he struggled in the first and second rounds.
Yeah.
But, I mean, Brown especially has played really, really well. 21.3 points per game in the series on 55% shooting from the field and 60% from three. And I think Brad Stevens has just done a really good job of making sure he's involved in the plays, especially in this series. It seemed like he could sort of go silent in the first couple of rounds. Like, you just wouldn't see him shoot for, like, extended stretches of time.
Even in, like, game 2, I think, he was not really being involved. A lot of the points that he got were off putbacks and things like that.
Yeah.
You know, or, like, he catches an offensive rebound and puts up a jump shot. But that was an issue that I think perplexed a lot of people. Like, why wouldn't Stevens get him involved when he's been really efficient? It kind of reminded me of OG Anunoby in the last round, where he was one of the Raptors' most efficient offensive weapons, but he was used in such small amounts that he probably got most of his points off of other people's misses, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And, like, when you have a guy that's playing that well, you have to deploy him better, and I think that they did a great job of doing that in Game 3, and that's a big part of why they won.
And, of course, a lot of that is deploying him against Duncan Robinson.
Yeah.
Who they put on him.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, maybe that's a bad decision from Spoelstra. I'm not sure.
Well, they were constantly getting switches with whoever they wanted.
Yeah.
You know, Boston had no issue switching Duncan Robinson on to literally anybody. I mean, they really didn't care who they put on him, because no matter what, one thing that I noticed was how dramatically their offensive game has shifted. So one thing that Brown did really well was drive towards the paint and open up better shots for himself. So in Game 1, which the Celtics lost if you are not following the series, the Celtics had 42 three-point attempts, huge amount, and they were actually quite accurate on them. And they only had 26 paint points. So that adds up to about 40% of their shots being at the rim or, you know, close to the rim, and 44% of their shots being from three. In Game 2, they tried a little something different. They dropped down to 28 three-point attempts, and they had 46 points in the paint, which meant that a little over half of their shots were at the rim or close to it, and about a third were from three. In Game 3, they went all out. Only 26 three-point attempts, 60 points in the paint, just so many, and 2/3 of their shots were at the rim or close to it, and only a quarter of their shots were from three. So I guess what they found is it's more effective to attack Miami at the rim than to try and beat them with shooting. And it's kind of interesting because you did see that aggression come out in Game 3 really pronouncedly. Like, they were really going in there, getting a lot of fouls and getting the easier points instead of trying to beat Miami at a game that Miami is just very good at.
Yeah, I mean, you think of Miami and you think of physicality, and I think in Game 3, the more physical team was Boston.
Yeah.
Like you said, they were really just driving to the rim and making a point of driving through their defenders.
They also had like 30 fouls, so they were playing physical on both ends.
Yeah. That probably helped Miami make their little run at the end of the fourth.
Oh, yeah.
And we sort of touched on this earlier, but Walker, you know, he's coming along 21 points per game in the series. The shooting splits don't look too great. 42% from the field, 32% from three. But I think if you're a Boston fan, you should be excited to see him being a little bit more assertive and playing with a slight bit more consistency.
Yeah, I've seen quite a bit of hatred for him from Boston fans, surprisingly. And, you know, I understand it's frustrating, but you have to understand that Miami's game plan, as well as Toronto's game plan in the immediate series before, have been to make his life a living hell.
Yeah.
Like, if you're Kemba Walker and you run into the middle of a zone defense and get swarmed, like, those guys are all like half a foot taller than you, and they're massive, and it's really, really hard to do anything out of that. And also, they're, you know, it's very hard for him to get even a 3-point shot off, just due to the nature of the defense that they're running. They're making life very hard for him.
Yeah, and, you know, the conundrum is if he was shooting better, he would be making his life easier for himself, right? Because they wouldn't be able to swarm him at the rim like they're doing right now. It would open up the court for him. And I think in Game 3 you saw glimpses of the three-point shot coming together.
Mm-hmm.
There were a couple of really tough off-the-dribble threes at pivotal moments that he hit. So I'm still very intrigued with how much better Walker gets in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Because he's basically a playoff rookie. I mean, he had 2 really lackluster playoff series with Charlotte, and they were like 5 years apart. So it's not like he has a great deal of experience in these situations.
Yeah. And just in general on the Celtics, their offensive execution down the stretch has to improve.
Mm-hmm.
That really has been their issue in every single one of these games where they've been, statistically favored to win by like the end of the third quarter and then blow it at some point, in the first 2 games at least. Basically, they're very smart about doing things like, let's say, hunting switches to get someone on Duncan Robinson or whoever, their preferred matchup, and then getting points that way. And then when it comes down to the last 5 minutes of the game, they just abandon any pretense of trying to do that, and they just pass the ball between each other to eat the shot clock, and then it ends up being a game of hot potato, and the last guy who has it with 6 seconds left has to drive into a bunch of defenders who know exactly what they're going to do.
Yeah, it's almost like they become too reliant on Tatum's brilliance in isolation situations at the end of the game, and they don't realize that they can get better shots by playing with some tempo and off-ball movement.
Yeah.
Which I don't think that they're actually particularly good at, period. I think they've always had a simpler offense than people let on. Especially compared to teams like Denver and Utah and Miami that really move a lot off ball. Celtics just don't do that. They've got good shooters and good isolation players, and they sort of just spread the court and let people work.
Yeah.
But like you said, it's just becoming too stagnant.
Yeah, it's too stagnant, and I'm trying to remember who wrote about this, but basically, even if you think like you're eating away the clock, you're helping yourself. If you're doing that with like half a quarter left to go in the game, all you're doing is reducing the effective field goal percentage of your own possession.
Yeah.
To a ridiculous extent. And in the end, it's going to cost you enough points that all the eating at the clock is going to work against you, not against your opponent. So, maybe it's just a issue of, I don't know, just theory of the game. But it is something that they need to look at if they want to continue winning games like they did in the last one, even though it was within 5 with a minute to go, completely unexpectedly. But that's what happens.
Yeah. And I think just the last thing to mention is on the other side of the ball at the end of the game, I think Jimmy Buttler just has to be more assertive.
Yeah.
He's averaging like less than 13 shots per game in this series, and I don't really understand that.
Yeah.
If he's supposed to be your best crunch time scorer and your best player in general, I think he should be getting more than 17 points per game, right? And the shooting averages are really good, It's like the guy's playing amazing ball. It's just he's not getting his shots up.
Yeah, it's very, very strange. I don't really understand where the lack of assertiveness is coming from. Yeah, I don't really know. And it's not like he's been running. I mean, he's been turning over the ball a few times. Like, he's been getting some amount of resistance from the Celtics, but I don't think that should be an excuse for not involving yourself more. Obviously, Bam has been the focal point of the Heat. That's fine. Bam is an excellent player, and Goran Dragic has been playing excellently as well. But Jimmy Butler is supposed to be the closer. And, if they don't want to blow the lead that they have right now in the series, he needs to kick into high gear, basically.
Yeah, I mean, or just score some buckets in the first quarter.
Yeah, something. Just inflate your stats a little bit, dude. Like, those points are going to matter.
If you're so upset about your team being behind in the first quarter, you know who's playing in those minutes? You.
Yeah. Yeah. That's for sure. And then just one last thing on the other end, someone who should be getting less minutes and less attempts at scoring is Kendrick Nunn. Just been a complete disaster. I really don't know what happened, but yeah, he's played himself out of the rotation. It's kind of sad, you know? You win, you're like a top 3 rookie of the year candidate, you get first team all rookie, and then you're like completely out.
A solid 12.5% from the field.
And, like, every single time, the Celtics have, like, a fast break or something, he, like, fouls the guy when there's, like, no chance that he's going to stop the layup or the dunk, It's like, what are you doing, man?
Yeah.
Well, shooter's going to shoot, I guess.
Even in the regular season, I always kind of felt like they were better off in the lineups without him.
Mm-hmm.
And I always thought that Dragic was better than his regular season stats. Anyway, let's move on.
Yeah.
All right, we're back to talk about Denver and the Los Angeles Lakers. So, Game 2, I think we can agree it was a lot closer.
No, I disagree. Game 1 was closer. No, you're
Hot
right.
take. Game 1, Denver actually played better than Game 2.
Hey, man, can't argue with the numbers. No, you can definitely not argue with the numbers. Yeah, Game 2 was actually probably one that Denver should have won. We'll talk about why they did not win it later. It's a very specific mistake that caused them to lose. But I think overall their approach in Game 2 was very interesting.
Yeah, so you found these shooting numbers for Game 1 versus Game 2, and I guess there are differences for Denver in that they took less shots at the rim, although they still took quite a few at the rim, and more mid-rangers.
Yeah, they pretty much just took 8% of their shots that were happening at the rim and moved them over to the mid-range.
Yeah.
Mainly in the short mid-range kind of area, the floater area. Which I thought was interesting because they took a ton of shots at the rim in Game 1, and their accuracy on it wasn't that terrible. Problem is, the Lakers are just a much better team at the rim, and it's going to be hard if those are the shots you're taking. It's going to be very hard to beat them there. I think the movement just slightly out while maintaining, they shot 56% on short mid-rangers, Denver did, which is incredible. Especially on the volume that they were taking. And they actually shot very, very poorly at the rim. So I think it actually behooves them to take fewer shots at the rim, even though they seem less accurate. But guys like Jokic and Murray are such good players just a little bit further out that I think you can stomach that if you're Denver, if it means avoiding their rim protectors.
Yeah, I think you still want to be aggressive and attack the rim. When Denver was at their best in Game 2, I thought they were playing through Jokic and attacking Jokic's size advantage over Anthony Davis. You saw that especially in the end of the game when Jokic scored 11 straight points to put them ahead by 1 before Anthony Davis hit that amazing three-pointer. Mm-hmm. I do agree with you, though. He had some pretty interesting plays from that 3 to 10 foot range. And I think other players did too. Murray's obviously got a beautiful jump or floater from that range. I think on the other side of the ball, something that you see when you look at these shooting frequencies is that the Lakers took far fewer shots at the rim, which surprised me, right? Mm-hmm. Because when I look back on Game 2, I think of that game as having a lot of penetration from the Lakers.
A lot of what?
A little penny. And I think that the reason that I remember that game for so many paint looks from the Lakers is that when they did attack the paint, they attacked it really well, right? Mm-hmm. Their percentage at the rim increased drastically from Game 1 to Game 2. Mm-hmm. Even if their transition looks weren't quite as efficient as they could have been, I think the Nuggets actually played really well in terms of transition D. They got out and pushed the pace so often that they were able to get good shots at the rim. Even if it's a bad transition shooting percentage, it's still above 55%, right? Because it is in transition, and transition looks are just generally so much more efficient.
Yeah, and also the transition looks that they were getting off of steals were incredible. I mean, they were scoring 143 points per 100 possessions off of steals, and they converted the 9 steals that they got throughout the game 78% of the time into transition plays, which is a pretty good number if you are trying to score some easy buckets. So, it's very hard if you're the Nuggets to rush back like that. I mean, it's almost impossible, especially if you have guys like Jokic as the biggest guy on the court and Plumlee is the alternative. Like, neither of those are really guys that are going to be able to make up the distance very quickly.
Man, Plumlee's been so bad.
He's been bad. Should we just talk about...
Yeah, let's just mention the play.
So if you've seen the video, you know what we're talking about. I don't know if I would recommend the uninitiated to watch it. It's kind of sad. Basically, it's the last play of the game. The Lakers have 2 seconds to score. And I'm guessing what they told Plumlee was, if there's a screen, if LeBron sets a screen, switch on to him, and Jeremy Grant will switch on to Davis. But what happens is Davis just runs around the arc, and Plumlee's already like 10 feet behind him at this point, because, it's Mason Plumlee. And then he just decides to lock on to LeBron and then point at Anthony Davis and tell Jeremy Grant to switch on him. For no reason. LeBron was just standing there. And so Jokic had to somehow leap 15 feet over the course of half a second and try to contest the shot. He did the best he could, but it was a pretty open shot. And, the rest is history. It's definitely a cautionary tale about subbing in a guy that you think makes sense for, I'm guessing, like a lob prevention, But this guy is like totally cold. He's just not that good in general. And he's very liable to get confused by something as simple as one guy running around the arc.
Yeah, it makes me wonder if Frank Vogel called that play because he saw Mason Plumlee out there. Because it was so brilliant.
Yeah.
To run this very, very simple play of just a screen set by LeBron for Anthony Davis and then a pass out to Anthony Davis. Like, it's not a complex play, but it's the perfect play to run Mason Plumlee through.
From what I heard about the post-game interviews, the original play was to get LeBron the ball, but AD was so open that, like, Rondo just, ad-libbed it, and it worked out perfectly.
Yeah.
As he should. But, yeah, I mean, either way, like, what is he doing? There was no screen.
No.
It was just guys standing there.
Yeah. I mean, I really think I'm more inclined to blame Michael Malone for putting Plumlee out there to begin with.
Yeah.
I think that's just a really poor decision.
Putting Plumlee out there at any point is bad decision.
Yeah.
It's sometimes a decision you have to make because of the way rotations work, but you should
because
minimize...
of all of the fouls that Jokic has been having.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what happens when you have to guard AD, which I guess that's been really the central story. So, fuck Plumlee,
Yeah. R.I.P. His minutes are probably dead.
I hope so. Jesus Christ, man. I hope we see more Dozier minutes. That guy was awesome, even though he missed 4 free throws and probably cost them the game in a different way. He was awesome.
I was thinking about that today. There's 4 free throws. It's also, suddenly not badass at all when you're screaming about an and one and you miss the and one twice, and then you also miss 2 other free throws.
But to his credit, those 2 charges were pretty clutch. Pretty clutch. But enough of those guys. Let's get to the central story, because in this series, even LeBron has been pretty quiet. AD has really been the carrier of the torch for the Lakers. I mean, he's just been torching Jokic in some regards, although Jokic has gotten a lot better, I think. From game 1 to game 2, you saw a big improvement in how Jokic was guarding AD. But AD has just been a sharpshooter from the mid-range, and what more can you do?
Yeah, I mean, his stats for the series so far are 34 points per game, 9.5 boards on 52.3% shooting from the field and 42.9% from 3. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
I think from Denver's perspective, it's actually really interesting the issue that they have of guarding Davis, because Millsap has actually played him extremely well. He's spent the most time on Davis by far, probably like half of all minutes guarding Davis for the series, and he's holding Davis to 30% shooting.
Wow.
I mean, it's pretty amazing that Davis, and it's also telling how well Davis has been playing against anyone else, that Davis has the stats that he has while being held to 30% shooting by one person.
Yeah.
The problem is Millsap's the obvious candidate to guard Davis throughout the series, but he's been so bad offensively that you're giving up like a ton on the other end of the court when you play him.
Yeah, and I think that's the conundrum for a lot of the Nuggets guys, right? You're choosing one or the other. Like there are other real defensive guys. Gary Harris is like...
Yeah, let's talk about him later.
Yeah, and then Torrey Craig, aka TC.
TC.
Like, those guys just aren't going to be getting you buckets. If you have them out there, you might be slowing down the Lakers, definitely not stopping them. But, you know, if they can't make open shots, and the best thing that Jokic can do is generate open looks for his guys, that's a huge sacrifice.
Yeah, but it's not just not making open shots with Millsap. Millsap's shooting 36% from the field, but look, his offensive rating is 83, which is absolutely terrible. And he's turning the ball over twice as much as he was during the regular season. And they're stupid turnovers.
Yeah.
Like, if you watch the games, he's like throwing balls straight to Anthony Davis. There was a play where he was trying to save an inbound, and I think Gary Harris or Jamal Murray was right next to the out-of-bounds marker, and he threw it to Anthony Davis.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was crazy. It was like a bullet pass to Anthony Davis.
Yeah. It's really boneheaded mistakes that I think are indicative of and look like they're happening by a person that's like kind of scared of the moment.
Yeah, just to put it into perspective, his turnover percentage is 24.5, which basically means 1 in 4 times he's turning over the ball.
Yeah.
That's just untenable. Like, what the hell? What are you going to do? Gary Harris is right up there with 23.5%. So those two guys are not really helping matters on the offensive end by doing that.
Yeah, but the issue is like, you know, from a strategic perspective, you kind of have to have Millsap out there because Davis is just killing you so much. And, you know, the difference between Millsap and Harris is that there are some minutes where Millsap is playing really well. They don't include the starting lineup minutes where they're literally even.
Yeah.
But there are lineups that are effective with Millsap. And then just the second most likely defender of Davis for the series is Jokic, and he's getting torched. AD's scoring 60% of the time when Jokic guards him, and I mean, if you watch the footage, he's too fast for Jokic. There's a lot of plays where they're just getting Davis the ball at the top of the key and isolating him, and Jokic just can't defend the drive.
Yeah.
And if he sags off of Davis, Davis just hits a mid-range jump shot over him. He's not shooting threes against Jokic.
No, and he doesn't need to.
Yeah, it's smart.
Yeah.
It's really smart coaching from Frank Vogel. They're putting him in the best possible position every time down the floor.
Yeah. I mean, on the other end, Jokic is also playing very well. Like 25 points a game on 50% shooting from the field. Pretty good. Really, the main issue is he's just not shooting that many threes.
Yeah.
I think the Lakers have been doing a good job defending him on pick and pops and stuff like that, just really discouraging his three-point shooting. And he seems to be really reluctant, for whatever reason, to shoot them, as opposed to in the last series. I don't know how much of that is really the Lakers doing. But, you know, it seemed like he was kind of getting a bit more comfortable doing it in the last game. I think he hit a couple of threes. he's not putting up the same rebounds and assists as he did in the last series, though. And I do wonder if that is due to the fact that he's had to bear so much more of the offensive load on himself because the teammates are just not pulling it together.
I mean, it's tough, but like you said, it seemed like Denver was playing out of the mid-range a lot more this game. And I think in both games, the Lakers' big men, while I think it's been overblown how well they've played against Jokic, especially Dwight Howard, I think he's played pretty well against Jokic, but Jokic is still shooting 50% against Howard. He's shooting 57% against Davis. Those guys aren't stopping him offensively. What I think they are doing, though, is boxing him out and keeping him from getting rebounds, which is a big advantage for the Lakers because a lot of what Denver is able to do offensively hinges on offensive rebounds.
Yeah.
By Jokic. And they're just not getting those in this series.
Yeah.
So
it's a good point. Yeah. And occasionally Dwight Howard will decide to pull Jokic down to the ground and then somehow get a foul call and shoot free throws. So I have no idea how Dwight Howard's pulling it off.
He literally teabagged him.
Yeah. Yeah. Dwight Howard, he's being so annoying.
He 360 no-scoped him and then teabagged him afterwards.
Apparently he was yelling "go home" at the Nuggets after the end of the last game and pumping his fist at them, and some of the coaches on the Nuggets team were telling him to fuck off, and they had to diffuse the situation.
Well, I mean, if the Lakers win, Dwight Howard can probably go home because he's not going to be playing in the next series.
I fucking hope not, man. I'm tired of seeing him. But, he is doing a good job at what his job is, which is to be annoying. So, can't fault him for that.
Some would call it more than a job, maybe even a superpower.
Yeah, you're right. He's a regular Clark Kent over here. But yeah, I mean, Jokic has been doing a great job. One of the actions that they've been getting a lot is just running a bunch of screens and getting Jokic switched onto a smaller guy in the post, a mouse in the house situation, as some people say. But then obviously the Lakers will double team him, right? And then he's such a good passer that he'll find the exact right play out of it. The Nuggets haven't really been converting those shots very efficiently. They shot 34% from the three-point line in Game 1, 33% in Game 2. So I think they will have to improve those percentages a bit if they want to get the most out of those kinds of plays. Otherwise, you're tiring out Jokic for no good reason.
Yeah, and you're not going to get switches on those plays if guys aren't making three-point shots.
Yeah.
Because LA's not going to switch those screens. So a lot of this hinges on the other role players for Denver. I do think there were a couple of times in Game 2 where Jokic got the rare switch onto someone like Caruso, and didn't take him down to the block. Mm-hmm. Sometimes Jokic has a tendency to shoot over smaller players, and he's really good at that.
Yeah.
But I think he can get better shots if he just takes them down to the hole.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree with that. I think that the Nuggets have shown that they're capable of getting a fire lit under them and making the most out of it. So let's hope they do that so that this series is not a sweep. I would really like to see the Nuggets at least put up some fight. I would ideally like to see them win because that would be awesome, but we'll see what happens. LA does look very determined, and LeBron obviously every single time he's gone to the playoffs in the last decade makes it to the finals, so who knows if he's going to stop this year.
Yeah, and he's looked really in control in this series. I think his stats are understating his impact on the game. Mm-hmm. He's scoring 21 points per game in the series with around 50% shooting from the field, but it's the assists and the rebounds, and the defense has been just unbelievable all playoffs from LeBron. So I think Denver's got an uphill battle, and they've got to really figure out the answer to some important questions. We talked about the conundrum with Millsap and guarding Davis. The other big question, I think, is what are you going to do with Gary Harris? he's been so bad and he's playing 25 minutes a night. The guy's shooting 23% from the field and 28% from three with a 52 offensive rating.
Those are Siakam numbers. No, they're a lot worse than Siakam numbers. It's not good. I could probably get a 52 against AD. 1v1 me, dude.
Yeah, 52 is terrible, though. And you can tell that Michael Malone is trying to play him through these hard shooting stints. But, I mean, it's just not getting better. And there are guys on the bench that I think deserve a chance in lieu of Gary Harris. Also, I mean, one of the benefits of having Gary Harris out there is he's an amazing wing defender.
Mm-hmm.
But the Lakers don't really have anyone on the wing that is good enough to warrant playing such a bad offensive player. Is it worth it to have a defensive specialist out there to guard Danny Green?
You know, no disrespect to Danny Green, but absolutely not.
Yeah, I'd rather have, Monte Morris chasing Danny Green around and being able to hit some open shots than Gary Harris playing better defense but giving absolutely zero on offense.
Yeah. Hey, 52.
52.
Giving 52 on offense.
Half a person.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at some of the other lineups that Denver has played. For instance, I talked about replacing Harris. They played a lineup in Game 2. It actually cut the lead drastically in the third quarter. Jokic, Murray, Morris, Porter, and Craig. They were plus Plus42 per 100 possessions in 8 minutes. I think these are the sort of lineups that you really need to start looking at. Lineups with Dozier, right?
Mm-hmm.
The starting lineup with Dozier instead of Harris was plus 33 points per 100 possessions in 6 minutes, right? They brought the team back within reach in the fourth quarter.
And that's with the 4 missed free throws.
Yeah. I mean, he'd probably be plus 50 points per 100 possessions if he made those fucking free throws.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, one of the most illuminating stats, John Hollinger posted it on Twitter, was that in Game 2, Jamal Murray played 44 minutes and was a plus 16, and they lost by 2, which means that in 4 minutes that Jamal Murray was on the bench, they were minus 18.
Yeah.
And Gary Harris was, I believe, a minus 16 in his 25 minutes, so he was a big part of that. Just not great.
They should never play Harris without Murray.
Yeah. No, it's he's minus 14. So, basically, they canceled each other out.
I mean, what does he do on offense? He can't shoot.
No.
He can't dribble.
No. He's a good cutter. He's a decent cutter.
But he's so in his head that he's not even good at that anymore.
Yeah, and the Lakers are really good at preventing those kinds of looks.
Yeah.
It's just not great. They're not going to get those crazy open shots for Torrey Craig and Gary Harris that they were getting against the Clippers, against a team like the Lakers. And, I just really don't know what he can do. The only shot he hit in Game 2 was so wide open that I don't even think there was a defender within 15 feet of him. So, at least he hit that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's so sad. It's been really sad to watch Gary Harris's career implode. Essentially, after he signed that big contract extension.
Yeah, it can't be that sad for him. He signed a huge contract. He's going to be making $20 million a year.
Yeah, but he's going to get stretch provision soon.
That may be possible. Yeah, it's unfortunate. He had a very promising career in the beginning. He was very efficient as well as being a defensive specialist, and now, I mean, he's just so inefficient that it's completely canceling out any benefit that he may have. And, there must be some kind of lasting effect from his injuries that's just throwing off his entire shooting form. Because he's still, solid defender, has the right instincts. It's just, if you can't get your fucking body to contort properly to get the ball in the basket, there's only so much you can do.
Yeah, and I mean, clearly there's a psychological element to this too, where he's just psyching himself out for making these shots.
Yeah.
I think when you in a hole in terms of shooting, it just becomes harder and harder to get out of that hole the worse you shoot.
Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and diagnose Gary Harris with generalized anxiety disorder and give him a prescription for 2 milligrams of Xanax daily.
All right. Well, I think that's all of our thoughts on the series so far.
Oh, one more thing. Rondo needs to change his haircut. I'm tired of seeing that shit on TV. It's not good.
I mean, maybe Gary Harris needs a hipper haircut because the little mini fro thing that he's got going on is pretty lame.
Yeah, he needs to fix things. That might be a good place to start. I don't know. Maybe he can grow a mustache like Gordon Hayward.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's capable of it. I don't know if anyone's capable of growing a mustache quite like Gordon Hayward. But they got to figure it out. I'm sure Michael Malone will figure out which, haircut he should get to improve his game.
He should copy Dwight Howard's haircut.
Yeah, maybe Gary Harris should just turn into the Dwight Howard of the Nuggets and just be like, yeah, and just push around LeBron constantly until LeBron punches him and gets ejected. I don't know.
Just pull a Lance Stevenson circa 2014.
Just start licking his ear during a free throw. Yeah. That might work. And then you can just have PJ Dozier replace him in the starting lineup and take charges all game.
PJ Dozier, the guy that looks like he's 17.
Yep. All right. Well, Michael Malone, Post Malone, you have my number. I got some more ideas for you. I'd like to bounce them off you. Yeah, so I think that wraps it up, right?
Yeah, I think that's it. We'll try to get another one out maybe next weekend.
Yeah, maybe right before the end of the conference finals so we can give our hot takes on how they'll end.
Yep.
Hopefully they both go to 7 games. I'd like to see more of that, considering I don't have a horse in the race anymore, really, except for wanting to see the Lakers lose.
Yeah, I mean, we're still token Miami fans for the time being to get payback against Boston.
Yeah.
But I'm becoming less and less interested in that position with every passing game.
Yeah, well, Heat Nuggets, the dream's still alive. Let's see it happen. NBA, quit fucking rigging that stuff. We know what you're doing.
All right.
Expose coming soon.
Waking up.
Yep.